Hello everyone, welcome back to Bulnerescu TV. Today we are reacting to Romania is building the biggest Orthodox church in the world. I am so excited because Romania is now basically built the biggest church in the world right next to the second heaviest building in the world in Casa Poporului. This is a very interesting situation we're in. The Romanian Orthodox Church is absolutely huge in Romania, so it's understandable. But let's watch. I don't really know anything about this, but I do want to visit this church the next time I go back to Romania. Let's get started.
Romania is a country which likes to
Simon
build big
Whistler.
things. Think about the Palace of the Parliament, a monumental structure which seats the country's parliament and is the heaviest building in the world at a gargantuan.
I was wrong. It is the heaviest building in the world, and I think the second largest building in terms of being an administrative building. So that's crazy. I think the Pentagon is the biggest one. Can't remember.
4.1 million tons. The palace is the largest parliament building in the world and the second largest administrative center of any kind after the Pentagon. It has more than 1,000 rooms and occupies some 365,000 square meters of floor
I nailed that. Give me some props.
space, making it almost similar in size to Vatican City. It is currently around 70% empty, with it having been a great challenge since its creation to simply find things that can occupy such a vast space. Or what about the House of the Free Press, another colossal structure at a height of over 100 meters, which was built to house the printing press of Romania at a time when media was closely controlled by the government of the then.
I didn't even think about this. I just thought that was a normal newspaper building when I was there. Crazy.
Romanian People's Republic. Both buildings built in the socialist brutalist style of architecture.
Also, this street used to be like all houses, and Ceausescu ripped them up in order to like line the streets and have like all of his wealthy like followers live here. So when people came to Romania, they would come down this street and it has fountains and it's beautiful with trees and beautiful buildings. And they would come up to his huge palace.
Lie in the Romanian capital of Bucharest and offer a distinctly grandiose character to the cityscape. Now, granted, both of these buildings were built during a very specific era in Romania, a time where gigantic buildings sprung up not just there but across all of the Eastern Bloc. This was a feature of the political system in place at the time, something not really specific to any one nation. Similarly in Warsaw, Sofia, Moscow, and elsewhere. But it seems like, to at least some extent, the appetite for huge buildings has not entirely disappeared in Romania, something best displayed by the ongoing construction of another massive project, the People's Salvation Cathedral. Begun in
Look, that's like basically on the same lot as Casa Poporului.
2010 and slated for completion in 2025, the People's Salvation Cathedral can only be described as a mega cathedral. It is the future seat of the Romanian Orthodox Church and the tallest Orthodox structure in the entire world at a height of over 130 meters. The building of the cathedral has led to some debate, with some seeing it as a white elephant or a vanity project coming at an astronomical financial cost for the state. However, others have pointed out its potential draw as a tourism attraction and a site for future pilgrimages by Orthodox faithful from across the globe, in addition to its spiritual purpose as a church tending to the needs of its faithful in what remains a deeply religious country. So, today,
experiencing Romania, everyone says it's very religious, and I would say like 97% of the people identify as Orthodox. How many are like actually practicing? And a lot of the youth say they're Orthodox, but they're really like, they don't believe in God much. So that's interesting. But I mean, this is massive, and I don't want to generalize. There's a lot of people who still do, but a lot of the people I talk to, they're like, I don't know. But still, this is a massive project. Look at this thing. It's towering over all the other blocks.
on Mega Projects, we thought we'd take a look at this immense project, why it came to be, what are its details, and what is likely to be the economic cost to benefit ratio in an attempt to determine whether it was really worth building at all. So first, some context. Romania is a predominantly Eastern Orthodox Christian country, and according to statistics, a deeply religious one at that. Per the Pew Research Center, the population of Romania was about 86% Orthodox Christian in 2017. The center also...
That seems pretty low to me, but could be right. I don't know.
found Romania to be the most religiously devout among 34 surveyed countries in Europe, with 50% of the population stating that religion played a very important role in their lives, and the same population claiming to attend religious services at least once a month.
Okay, that's good to know. I didn't know that. But I will say, because of how religious Romania is one of the reasons I fell in love with it. I feel like religion bleeds into their everyday lives. They're super family oriented. They always talk about God or about cool things in their life that have happened because of their religion. And I don't know, it is really a cool country with so many people being religious.
In a way, the ethnically and linguistically diverse minority populations, including Hungarians, Turks, and Roma, the ethnic Romanian population was found to be 91% Orthodox, according to population census in 2021. In addition, another recent survey found that religion in Romania is closely linked to national identity, with 3/4 of surveyed Romanians stating that, quote, "it is very or somewhat important to be a Christian to truly share Romanian national identity." The building of new Orthodox churches is quite a common phenomenon and generally quite uncontroversial at that. Unlike in parts of Western Europe, where the number of churches outweighs demand and some former prayer houses have been adapted for other purposes, the demand for the building of new churches seems present and stable in Romania. The BBC estimated in 2013 that on average around 10 new houses of worship were being consecrated in Romania every single month. However, it is the steep cost.
Holy crap, 10 new churches or houses of worship every month? Go Romania, you guys are crushing it.
Of the People's Salvation Cathedral, which has raised eyebrows even in the religious environment of Romania. When the project was announced in 2009, the Romanian Orthodox Church declared that the final budget, including materials, labor costs, and artwork installation, would be 400 million euros. In other words, the equivalent of 0.23% of the entire GDP of the country for that year, being set aside for the financing of a single building, with most of this due to come from public funding. The project has been criticized by some as pharaonic and reminiscent of massive construction projects that were typical of the authoritarian Ceausescu regime of the socialist period. And it is, in fact, the legacy of such projects during the socialist era, which in some ways underpin the choice to build the cathedral, as well as the choice of its location. The cathedral's located in central Bucharest, next to the Palace of the Parliament, with which it shares an embankment known as Spireas Hill. The location for the cathedral was ostensibly chosen partly to draw the eye away from the hulking palace, an immense but distinctly aged symbol of the oppressive regime which was toppled in 1989. With the cathedral built on a slight elevation and already dwarfing the palace in height, it in some ways represents the rediscovery of the Romanian people of their identity through religion, which is seen as having re-emerged in the years since communism ended in Romania and other countries of the Eastern Bloc.
Right. Scale.
When the final cross is added to the dome of the structure, the building is expected to be 135 meters tall. This will make it the second tallest building in Romania, standing only 2 meters shorter than the Floreasca skyscraper and entertainment and administrative complex also located in the capital. Its size will also make it, by some margin, the tallest Orthodox church in the world, some 13 meters taller than the second-place St. Peter and Paul Cathedral in Russia's St. Petersburg, and also the largest Orthodox structure by floor space. Admittedly, this will still only just about make it onto the list of 10 tallest churches in the world, edging out the 11th placed Linz Cathedral by only several centimeters. The building will also be the biggest Orthodox church by volume, about 330,000 cubic meters, although this too is significantly less than some of the gargantuan structures of the Roman Catholic Rite in Western Europe and Latin America. The building will be able to welcome around 6,000 worshippers and a church choir of 1,000. It will have 4 elevators and will also feature a 25-ton bell, which according to Radio Free Europe shall be heard at a distance of over 20 kilometers. It will also feature the world's largest...
Do you guys realize how crazy that is? They will be able to have 6,000 worshippers and 1,000 choir members and a bell that can be heard from 20 kilometers? That is crazy.
Orthodox iconostasis, or wall of icons, planned to be over 23 meters long.
Wow.
And just in case a building of this scale wasn't already eye-catching enough, the cathedral site in central Bucharest is also located close to the axis of all approach roads to the capital, ensuring that it will be visible when approaching the city from all directions.
I think right there is the Marriott, if I remember right. I never stayed there. I just remembered walking by it once.
Throughout much of its lengthy construction, the People's Salvation Cathedral generated significant controversy. Perhaps unexpectedly for a project of this scale, the building ran over budget. The initial funds set aside for the project were around 80 million euros, but by 2018, that cost had already run to 110 million euros, with the final opening of the structure still many years away. By 2024, the cost had risen to 230 million, with financing continuing to pour in from various sources. Critics pointed out that the huge cost may have been better spent towards hospitals, schools, or other state infrastructure. Sociology professor Gelu Dominica of the University of Bucharest highlighted that many Romanians still survive on around €3 a day at the time the project was being built, and that some parts of the capital city, Bucharest, remained without functional running water. He concluded that, quote, "It seems that the authorities are more interested in investing in our well-being in heaven rather than here on earth." Balkan Insight reported that a July 2018 budget overhaul had resulted in around 15 million euros being diverted towards the project out of funding set aside for the presidential administration, scientific research institutes, and intelligence services. Whoa. And yet another criticism was put forward by MP Rina Cernia, who argued that the huge contribution to the project from public funds represented an unwelcome infringement of the separation of church and state, a claim which holds some water given Romania's status as an officially secular country. He added that the church's construction should have been financed above all via church funds and charitable contributions rather than via funding from the state, especially given that Romania has been the beneficiary of a financial bailout from the IMF only a short period before the construction of the church began in 2010. The church's plans for the cathedral even received some opposition from its own flock. Father Casian Pandelica, an Orthodox priest from a parish in southeastern Romania, received attention in 2018 for refusing to raise money from his congregation for the financing of the project, arguing that he did not trust the intentions of the church and that the funds raised could easily be misappropriated. He was ultimately excommunicated from the church. The immense cost of the church was even criticized by some attendees at its official inauguration ceremony, which took place in November of 2018, with the presence of the ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew I, spiritual leader of the Eastern Orthodox Church.
Wow.
But despite the criticism, is there a chance that Romania's mega-cathedral gamble will have economically paid off? To look into how this church could benefit Romania, it is important to consider its potential contribution not only to the adherents of the faith in Romania, but also those coming from abroad, and its potential contribution to tourism in the country in general.
Okay.
In general, Romania does not derive much of its GDP from tourism. Per Statista, the share of Romania's GDP derived from tourism in 2023 was 5.6%, leaving it ranked at number 21 of the 28 EU countries surveyed.
Romania is not visited enough, I think, because when people think about Romania, they think about Bucharest, and Bucharest has a lot to offer between like Terme, Casa Poporului, like Centru, like all of the stuff. There's so much it has to offer. But when you really leave Bucharest and go outside and you visit like Brașov area, Transylvania, and go to like Sibiu, Sighișoara, when you get outside of the capital and you really experience Romania, that's when it's the best. And then you can even go through a lot of these little towns, and my wife and I spent like multiple hours in one small little town that was like 100 people because it's just so beautiful. There's so much natural beauty. So I'm here to promote tourism to Romania in terms of increasing the GDP to help promote or to help support Romanians in their funding.
This leaves Romania ranked behind its neighbors Greece, Hungary, and Bulgaria, and its tourism receipts actually fell slightly from the previous year when it was found to be a little over 6% of Romania's economy. Only a few years before, in 2018, Romania was found to have one of the lowest contributions by tourism to its economy in the entire world at around 1.3% of GDP. Moreover, while Bucharest remains the most visited destination in Romania, with around 1.8 million arrivals in 2023, it is closely followed by the Black Sea resort of Constanta and the Transylvanian city of Brașov, both of which get around 1.5 million visitors each year.
Okay, that's
With both
respectable.
cities having relatively small airports, it is likely that many of these arrivals came by way of Bucharest, potentially inflating its own tourism numbers and rendering it relatively undervisited given its status as both the capital city and most major transport hub for the entire country. But with the advance of time and the introduction of new travel routes to Eastern Europe, the economies of Romania and surrounding countries are increasingly opening up to new avenues of tourism. And it is true that even for visitors of all faiths and none, the major cathedrals of neighboring countries are among their most visited locations. Few will have visited Sofia in Bulgaria without passing by the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, while visitors to Serbia will be familiar with the Church of St. Sava, one of the capital city Belgrade's most renowned
definitely
features.
visit those.
Similarly, Romania's northern neighbor Moldova counts the Nativity Cathedral in downtown Chisinau as among its most visited.
Yeah, and Chisinau, I never went there. I didn't spend enough time in Chisinau, but that looks beautiful.
Cultural sites. So, what about its draw to devotees of the Orthodox faith? Perhaps in this regard, Romania is even better suited than other countries to reap benefit. To Romania's south, west, and east are three predominantly Orthodox countries in Greece, Serbia, and Bulgaria, all members of the EU and the Schengen Free Movement area. Romania, being located in the middle of all three, makes it well located to receive pilgrims from all three, many of whom may already transit through to Romania anyway in order to visit the Orthodox pilgrimage sites in the other countries. To Romania's north sit Moldova and Ukraine, also countries with huge Orthodox populations.
Yeah.
Despite not being EU member states, both countries benefit from relatively simple rules of entry for entering Romania. This is especially true in the case of Moldova, many of whose citizens are also citizens of Romania. And for travelers from these countries, Romania lies directly on.
For people who don't know, Moldovans have multiple passports usually. Usually they have a Romanian one and a Moldovan one, or a Moldovan one and a Russian one, just depending on where your ancestry came from.
The overland's path toward Istanbul, the seat of the ecumenical patriarch of the church, as well as the Hagia Sophia, which remains a common destination for Orthodox devotees despite being
That actually looks way sick too.
controversially redesignated a mosque in 2020. Travel to Romania also remains relatively easy for citizens of the country, with the single largest Eastern Orthodox population in the world, Russia. Unlike a string of other countries which heightened restrictions on Russian travelers following its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Romanian entry rules have remained the same, allowing visa-free travel for short stays. This means that access to Romania remains relatively easy for adherents from Russia's 100 million strong Orthodox flock, and Russian visitors are likely to be one of the biggest targets of the megaproject. If the current biggest Orthodox church in the world is any kind of benchmark to use, the number of visitors to the St. Peter and Paul Cathedral is thought to be around 1.5 million annually. Despite being open to visitors only 4 days per week, as would likely be the case with the People's Salvation Cathedral, this represents a massive number of visitors, although the cathedral sits as part of a fortress complex which may slightly inflate the number of visitors. If the People's Salvation Cathedral were to attract a number close to this amount, it would represent a significant contribution to Romania's tourism industry and would likely also contribute to a rise in visitation to Bucharest's other landmarks, not least the Palace of Parliament, which sits directly opposite. And even discounting its potential economic value, and despite the criticism from many parts of Romanian society, there is clearly at least some significant popular support for the project. This 2018 inauguration was attended by thousands of people, with injuries among the faithful as people crushed against police for access. Its substantial cost to one side, there is an argument that the People's Salvation Cathedral represents something uniquely Romanian, a symbol which speaks to what remains, for some, an important part of its cultural identity and a break from a skyline dominated by remnants of its authoritarian past, buildings shunted upon the population, which stand as a lingering reminder of an era generally not fondly remembered. Now, with all that said, it may be that the church will not keep the title of the largest Orthodox church in the world for long. In 2020, the Moscow Times announced plans by Russian authorities to build the world's largest Orthodox church there. Certainly, losing the crown of the biggest Orthodox church in the world would have an impact on the draw of the cathedral and risks downsizing it to the status of just another massive cathedral among many in southeastern Europe. With that said, there has been little update since regarding the Russian project, with plans potentially having faded following the COVID-19 pandemic and in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine. And even if the Russian project still comes into fruition, this may have little bearing on the visitorship of the People's Salvation Cathedral. Given its geographic location and combination with other prominent Orthodox sites in Eastern Europe, the cathedral in Romania will likely still draw many times more visitors than the Russian cathedral, which is mooted for the relatively isolated Siberian region of Sverdlovsk, in a country which has already seen its visitorship reduced by sanctions related to the war with Ukraine. With the scheduled date of completion of this particular mega project due next year, time will soon tell if the ambitious project...
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty freaking awesome. You guys know I'm not an Orthodox member by any means, but that's so cool that they've built that. Obviously, the economics of it is pretty wild behind it, and that was so cool for this guy to explain. I don't know about Russia building one. That would definitely probably hurt this, but I know next time I'm in Bucharest, I want to visit this place. I want to go in and see the awe. And it should be open at this point. By the time you're listening to this, this project should be open. I will have to go do a deep dive, but it is 2025 now, so it's got to be open. If you could take a moment, please like and subscribe. That helps me get towards my goal of coming back to Romania and bringing my wife and kids back to Romania for a visit. But this is incredible. Whatever it may be, it could be taking some eyes off the communist regime, like he mentioned, or building faith in the Orthodox religion. I know I am not paying for it. I wish they would have actually put funding in towards the hospitals and towards education. But this, if it does pan out the way that they say it will, and it will benefit them and their economy, then I'm all for that. So pretty cool. It is an absolutely stunning and beautiful place. I want to go inside and show you what it's like. But that gold... 6,000 people in there will be crazy. It will be massive. So cool thing that they have built the largest Orthodox church in the world right in my loving country of Romania. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you have a great day. Love you guys. Peace.